So today's daf is daf Yud Beis, but we're going to start with the Mishnah on daf Yud Alpha Mid Beis. HaPesach sheshchoto shachris bi'arba asar shalol l'shmo. So the Mishnah now is going to record a machlokas between Rabbi Yoshua and Ben Beseira regarding a Pesach that was shalol l'shmo, which is possible, but it was shechted on the 14th of Nisan. And Rabbi Yeshua Machshir, Rabbi Yeshua says that this is like a Pesach the whole year round because the morning of the 14th is like the rest of the year. You don't bring the Korban Pesach on the morning of the 14th. And just like if you shechted a Korban Pesach the whole year round, Shalol Lishma, the Pesach has a din of Shlomim, and Shlomim Shalol Lishma is kosher, so too, on the morning of the 14th, it's kosher. However, Ben Beseira disagrees. Posel kilu nishchat bein arbayim. Even though the Torah says that the shechita on the 14th of Nisan should be bein arbayim, which means in the afternoon, he, as the Gemara will soon explain, Ben Beseira understands that bein arbayim means from the evening to the evening, meaning it covers the entire day. Omar Shimon ben Azai, Mekubal ani mipi shivim ushnaim zaken. I heard, and I got a tradition, which is kind of like halacha shenimsera misinai, from all the members of the Sanhedrin that agreed, and it took place on the Yom, on the day shel shivu es Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah b'yeshiva. There was a big controversy in which Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head he was the Nasi at the time, he was deposed, and they appointed in his place Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And on that day, I heard from all the members of the Sanhedrin, Shekol Zevachim hanecholim, any carbon that's eaten, with the exception of ola, which is kolil, and it's not eaten at all, shenizbu shelo lishma ksherim, that if it was shechted for the sake of a different carbon, then it's kosher. El shelo ola l'bayla mishum chova, chutz min ha-pesach min ha-chatos. So the Mishnah now explains what is Ben Azai's argument against the Chachamim. Lo hosef Ben Azai ela ha'ola v'lo hodu lo Chachamim. So Ben Azai says that an ola, since it's not nechal, therefore the psul of shalol lishma applies. And if you shechted the ola l'shem shlomim, then the carbon is completely possible, like that of a chata shalol lishma or a pesach shalol lishma. And the Chacham disagreed. Omer Rabbi Elazar, Omer Rabbi Oshaya. Machshir hoy ben beser pesach sheshchato shachris barbas lishma. The kuli yom is manehu. Ben Beseira holds that if you went ahead and you shechted the Korban Pesach in the morning of the 14th, then it's kosher. If it was shechted l'shma. In other words, this is Ben Beseira's unique shita that the entire day, daylight hours of the 14th of Nisan are all fit for the Korban Pesach. Umay ke'ilu. So what does Ben Beseira mean when he says that right, it says just one second, sorry, I just quote the Mishnah here. It says Ke'ilu nishchat bein harbayim. What do you mean Ke'ilu nishchat? According to what we're saying now, Ben Beseira holds that this is called bein harbayim. So why do you say Ke'ilu? It's like it's bein harbayim. So the Gemara first pulls off a symmetry. We've seen this many times. Either the Tari Rabbi Yeshua Ke'ilu, Omar Iu Nami Ke'ilu. In other words, Rabbi Yeshua said about the morning of the 14th, it's like the whole year round. And then he adds the word Ke'ilu. So that in order to be symmetrical, Ben Beseira also employs the word Ke'ilu. But really, according to this interpretation of Ben Beseira, the morning of the 14th has the same identical status vis-a-vis the Korban Pesach as the afternoon of the 14th. The hachi ad miflagi b'shalol lishma liflagi shma. why are they arguing, Rabbi Yeshua and Ben Beseira, about the case of Shalol Lishma? Let him argue about the fundamental issue of whether or not you can shech the carbon pesach in the morning. Lishma. So the Gemara answers a technical answer. If the Mishnah would have quoted their dispute in the case of the morning of the 14th Lishma, I would have thought of Shalol Lishma Modi Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira Hol Mitzasa Roy Kamashmon. We would have thought that even Rabbi Yeshua would agree that in the case of Shalol Lishma, where the carbon was shechted in the morning of the 14th, maybe Rabbi Yeshua would agree to Ben Beseira that it's possible. And the reason for that is because it's still a little bit roy for carbon pesach. It's at least the day of the carbon pesach. Kamash Malon, for the Mishnah has to tell me that according to Rabbi Yeshua, the morning of the 14th is like the rest of the year, and Shalol Lishma would be kosher. Frekte Gemara, how could Ben Beseira possibly say that you can bring the carbon Pesach in the morning of the 14th, v'ha ksiv bein arbayim? Right, the Torah itself says that we should bring the carbon Pesach bein harbayim. It says v'hoy lachem in Shmos Yud Beis and Pashas Bo L'Mishpes Arbosa Yom Lachosh Zev Shachatu also called Kaladas Yom Bein Arbayim. Omar Ula Braid Rav Eloi Bein Shnei Arovim. He interprets the phrase Bein Arbayim to mean between the two evenings, the evening going into the 14th and the evening going into the 15th, and anything in between during the morning hours. That's called Bein Arbayim. So wait a second. The Gemara says, can you apply that yardstick elsewhere? Tamid Dichsiv Bein Arbayim. The Torah commands us to bring the carbon Tamid Bein Arbayim. Es kevas echad taseh babok v'es kevas hashini taseh Bein Arbayim. Is hachinami dekule yome kosher? Does it mean that you could bring the carbon Tamid shel Bein Arbayim even in the morning because that's considered between the two evenings? We know that that's not so. A carbon Tamid shel Bein Arbayim has to be brought in the afternoon. From the fact that the Torah says you have to bring one keves in the morning, it means that the second keves Bein Arbayim is in the afternoon. Otherwise, there's an overlap between the two. Michal Bein Arbayim Bein Arbayim. In fact, the Gemara, I don't get it. Maybe the Tamid Shel Shachar could only be brought in the morning. The Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim could be brought during the entire daylight hours, whether it's the morning or the afternoon. The Gemara answers no. Echad baboker. The Torah says bring one in the morning. What does it mean? Keves echad taseh baboker v'lo shnayim baboker. So there's no overlap. Frekti Gemara, but what about Neros? What about a Lokas Neros in the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash? The Ksiv Bein Harbayim Achinami. It says in Shmos Perek Lamed Balos Aaron Esa Neros Bein Harbayim Yaktirenu, etc. It's Hachinami Dekuli Yoma kosher. Does that mean that you can light the menorah in the morning hours? We know that the menorah can only be lit towards the evening, in the late afternoon. So we see that Bein Arbayim means in the afternoon, not in the morning. Shani Hasam, there it's different. Erevat Boker. The Torah says that the menorah has to be prepared with enough oil to last from the evening until the morning. But Tanya, we learned, may Erevat Boker tein lo midasa, give a measure of oil into the menorah. Shetei dolekas v'olekas may erev ad boker. So may Erevat Boker means that the Kohen should arrange the menorah such that it would burn from the evening until the morning. And therefore it means that you can't light the menorah in the morning. But according to you, Ben Beseira, that Bein Harbayim means from the end of one evening and the beginning of the morning till the end of that day until the evening. So then you should be able to bring light the candle in the menorah in the morning. Dover acher. Now this brisa offers another pshat in the pasuk me'erev ad boker. Ein lecha avodah ksher me'erev ad boker el zu bilvad. Fine. So the Gemara says that the only avodah that's kosher from the evening until the morning is only the menorah, because other avodas have to be done during the day, but not from the evening and on. Anyway, we see clearly that the menorah has to be lit before nightfall, so that there's enough oil in there to last until the morning, but it can't be brought in the morning, can't be lit in the morning. The Gemara says that's not enough. I'll add another problem and a slug up to Ben Beseira. Ktoris t'chsiv bein Rabbayim. With regard to Ktoris, it says the oil moed michutz l'prochas asher me'erev ad boker, etc. And it says bein Rabbayim is hachinami dekule yoma kosher. Do you mean to say that you could bring the second Ktoris during the entire day? It's undisputed that the second Ktoris can only be brought in the afternoon. Gemara says shiny Ktoris, and here we start today's daf Yud Beis. The iskash l'neritz. We have a hekesh between Ktoris and neritz. Just like neritz, we said, is only in the afternoon, so too Ktoris is only in the afternoon. Frek the Gemara Hosam Nami Ksiv Sham Tizbach Es HaPesach Ba'erev. Right, with regard to the Korban Pesach, it says you have to slaughter the Pesach in the evening. That excludes the morning. The answer is Hahuli Chure Dover Hudios, means like following. If you're bringing the Korban Pesach in the morning, fine. No need to delay it. But if you didn't bring the Korban Pesach in the morning, then wait until after the Talmud Shel Bein Arbayim. You should not shech the Korban Pesach before the Talmud Shel Bein Arbayim. That's called Lachure Dover Udiosa, the Sanya. Yeuchar Dover Shenemer Bo Ba'erev Ubein Arbayim. The Torah has a double language. It says Ba'erev and it says Bein Arbayim with regard to the Pesach. And that's indicating that you should delay it. The Dover Shelo Never Bo Bein Arbayim Bilvad, but with regard to the Korban Talmud in the afternoon, it's only Bein Arbayim. It doesn't say the additional pasuk Ba'erev to teach you that you could delay the bringing of the Korban Pesach. And why are you going to delay it? Because you first want to make sure that you brought the Talmud. Do you have a precedent that the ilu shachid le mitzafra amrit zimni who v'chimot ben arbayim amrit yuchar domer? We don't have a precedent in Kodshim that you should, if you bring it in the morning, that's fine, and you don't have to delay it. But if you bring it in the afternoon, you have to delay it. We're going to derive it from tefillah, from the laws of prayer. Diyomar Rabbi Yochanan halacha mispal shel mincha akak mispal shel musafim. Right? Normally, you bring a korban musaf in the morning. Let's say you didn't bring the korban. I'm sorry, you daven musaf to replace the korban musaf in the morning. If you, in an event that you didn't daven musaf in the morning, then you don't daven musaf immediately in the afternoon. First, you should daven mincha, which is tadir, and then daven musaf. So you see, we have a precedent for something that in the morning hours, unlimited, just zmane, it's always the time. But if in the afternoon you have to delay it, all this is based on Rav Yoshia's understanding of Ben Beseira. Now the Gemara rejects Rav Oshia. I don't get it. According to you, Rav Oshia interpreting Ben Beseira, whenever it says Ben Arbayim, it means the entire day. So why did the Torah have to mention Ben Arbayim regarding the Ktoris and the Menorah? Theodin, furthermore, Heshiv Rebbe, let's see how Rebbe defends Ben Beseira in a brisa. The Divrei Rabbi Yeshua, lo, If Amar b'shloshasar she'ein miktsasa roy, Tomer b'arbasa she'miktsasa roy. You see that according to Rebbe, Ben Beseira held that the morning is called Miktsaso Roy. It means it's not the time for bringing the Korban Pesach, but it's Roy. It's part of the day that's Roy. V'im Isa Kula Roy. But why should he say that the morning is only like Roy? It's actually the Zman of the Korban. El Amar Rabbi Yochanan, therefore we have to conclude that even Ben Beseira concedes that you cannot shech the Korban Pesach in the morning. Posel hoye Ben Beseira Pesach shchoto bi'arbaso shachos. Ben lishmo ubein shelo lishmo hoil u'miktsaso roi. In other words, Ben Beseira accepted the logic that Rebbe presented to defend him of miktsaso roi only as far as the halacha of shelo lishma, meaning that if the Korban Pesach was shechted during the morning of the 14th, then even if it was shechted shelo lishma, just one second. Let me just get the mathematics here. Shechted in the morning. Right. So here's how it goes. A Pesach shelo bizmano, if it was shechted lishma, is kosher b'tor shlom. And you would have said, and that's what Rabbi Yeshua would certainly argue, that if you shechted the Pesach Lishma in the morning of the 14th, it's kosher. Why is it kosher? Because it's no different than if you shechted it the whole year round, when it becomes shlom if it was shelo Lishma. Comes along Ben Beseira and he says, no, if he shechted it in the morning of the 14th, it's considered roy b'miktzas. It's almost as if it's part of the day itself, and therefore the halacha that Pesach Shelo Lishma is possible applies to the morning of the 14th. Magadif Bar Rabbi Yavo didn't like it. Im Kain, he says that's so. Pesach Kosher Ben Beseira Heichem Mishkakasla. How could you ever have a case of a Pesach that would be kosher? And now we have to introduce a halacha that appears in Masechta Sukkah on Daf Lamed Gimel, which is called Dichui. If on the morning of the 14th he was mafresh the korban, then dochui mi karahu. It's already dochui. Why? Because you can't bring the korban pesach on the morning of the 14th, and we've established that even Ben Beseira agrees to that. So at that moment in time, you can't bring the korban. And even if you were to shecht it shelo lishma, it would still be possible because it's miktsasa roy. Let's say he was mafresh yesterday on the 13th, nirav nidchahu. Then when we get to the morning, it becomes dochu, right? Because you can't shecht it in the morning the same korban pesach, and you can't shecht it for the sake of another korban either, because shelo lishma is possible. So that korban is dochu. It was rejected from the mizbech. It's disqualified, and it's forever and ever disqualified. It's almost like he was joking around because let him be magdish the korban pesach after chatzos, so that it's roy for korban pesach, and it's not dochu. Even if you would argue that he designated the korban on the morning of the 14th, it's not dochui. There's no such thing as being dochui because he was magdashed prematurely on the very day that he will be makrivit. On that day itself, there's no din of dochui. I could tell you that he designated the night before, But Laila ain mechus zman. But we don't consider it before the zman in Laila because Laila is not the time for karbanis in general. The Tani to Bei Rabbi Shmuel Leil Shmini Nichlas Ledir Lis Aser. Right, the halacha is that you wait in the case of a bechor. You wait. I'm sorry, forget about bechor. We're talking about Maser Behema. In the case of Maser Behema, you wait until the little lamb reaches its 8th day, and then you designate it as Maser to be brought as a korban. But what about the night going into the 8th day? Kirav Af Turiki, to Rabbi Af Turiki Rami, he has the stira, Ksiv HaYeshivas Yom Tachas Imo, which means that for 7 days, the first 7 days of its life, it is not brought as a korban, as Maser. Whole Laila Chazi, apparently that the night going into the 8th day, it's fit to become a Maser Behema. But Uksiv, on the other hand, it says, Umiyom Hashmini v'hala yirotza, mashma, that only from the 8th day, with daylight, daybreak, and on, then it's roy to be a korban. Whole Laila Chazi, at night it's not roy. Okay, said, how do I reconcile this? Laila l'kedusha v'yom lahartzah. He can be magdashin at night, and it's not going to be considered dochui, even though if he wants to bring the korban, he's going to have to wait till the morning. So you see that even if, according to Rav Papa's logic, you are magdashin at night, and it's not yet roy, it's not dochui, because the night is not considered dochui. Amalei Rab Zera Rabbi Avo. From the argument of Rabbi Yochanan, we see that even a live animal is subject to the law of Dichui. Don't be surprised. Tiyom Rabbi Yochanan, I have a proof from another ruling of Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yochanan indeed applies the principle of Dichui to the case of a live animal. In the case we have 2 shutvim, and one shutaf is magdish his half of the animal, higdish chetzio, behem shel shnei shut higdish chetzio, v'chazav v'lokach. Then he buys out the other partner and higdisha, and then he's magdish the other half. So he was magdish the animal in 2 halves. Says Rabbi Yochanan, in such a case, kidosha v'eina kreva v'yosa tmura tmurasa keyotzeba. This korban is dachui. Why? Because when he was magdish half of it, at that moment of the hegdish, it cannot be brought to the mizbeach because he can't bring a half an animal on the mizbeach. And it does have a kedusha to it, because now he's magdish the second half as well. And osa tmura of a tmurasa bayotzeba. If he makes a tmura on this animal, that tmura will also have the same status of kedosha and a kreva. In any event, we're going to derive 3 conclusions from Rabbi Yochanan in the case of Shutvim, and one of them was Magdish's half, and then he bought out the other half as Magdish the other half. 3 halachas that we're going to derive, and one of those principles is the halach of Dichui Mechaim. Shmamino Balichaim Nidachim. Right, we see that when he was Magdish half the animal, his half, it became Dachui, even though it's still alive. Shmamina, furthermore, Dichui Mekaravi Dichui, even though it was Nidcha at the very moment of the Hakadasha, that's enough to generate the halacha of Dichui.